Today's episode of Passionate Talk is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audio download and 30-day free trial at books.passionatetalk.com. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Get your 30-day free trial and free audiobook at books.passionatetalk.com. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Passionate Talk. I am your host, Gary Karp, and this is episode number 45. Today is the second part of my interview with Todd LeBouef and Joanne Bisesi. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. And we are going to continue to talk about their brand new podcast, The Shadow Self, A Journey Within. We're going to continue to talk about their individual journeys on how they discovered their shadow self, why it is important to learn about your shadow self, and to accept who you are. So, without further ado, I want you to grab a cup of coffee, maybe some tea, and get ready to listen to the second half of my conversation with Joanne and Todd. I also want to bring up that, Joanne, you spoke a lot about that integration of the male spirit and the female spirit, of the feminine, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, which is a term you never hear, by the way. We always talk about the divine feminine, but nobody ever talks about the divine masculine, which I think is a very interesting thing. And what I find so interesting about that is, in a tarot deck is divided into three sections. It's divided into the major arcana, the minor arcana, and the court cards. The major arcana really tells the story of the fool's journey. And it's that journey from infancy to enlightenment that we all have to take to become who we are. And the last card of the major arcana, or one of the last cards actually, that we see is called the world. And in the world, it is represented by a hermaphrodite. The entire journey that we take on life, according to tarot and according to Jung, and we'll go back to Carl Jung and talk about him, is to merge those positive and feminine energies that were separated a long time ago from us, because we need each other. Even if you think about sex, okay, there's a reason the sexual act works as it does. It's a joining of the flesh. It's a merging of the two souls and bodies to become one. So that integration needs to happen. It is necessary.
I agree. And you can't have a king without a queen, and you can't have a queen without a king. So I've been saying it, like I said, for 16 years. And the women's groups look at me like I'm crazy. And they're like, you're not following the women's movement. You're not sticking up for sisterhood. I'm like, who says that I'm not? But you have to have balance. The masculine has to be there.
You bring up the women's movement, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate mail when I say this.
So will I, don't worry.
However, my belief in the feminist movement, it's hysterical because people see the way I treat people. They see the people I choose to take on as partners in my life, in my business, and how I support women in their desire to grow and become different and become more than they are. And they go, oh, you're a feminist. And I say, no, I'm a humanist. And I remember having a conversation with a young lady at a party at one time, and I said this, and she looked at me and went, well, that's just a cop-out. And I'm sorry. To me, the feminism movement is not about women going into the workforce and not about women acknowledging their masculine side. Yes, it's important that we have equal pay for equal work. Yes, it's important that the glass ceiling is removed from upward mobility in corporations or in entrepreneurship. And yes, I strongly believe we need more women in science, which is why I love the STEM movement that's going on right now. But for me, true feminism is allowing the woman to step into her power and be who she chooses to be without throwing any expectations on her. So if she wants to become a captain of industry, wonderful. If she wants to stay home and be a homemaker and raise a family, that's good too. But so often I find the feminist movement is about getting the woman into the workforce and proving that women can do everything that men can do. And they can. I'm not saying they can't. But when you are so driven on one specific goal that you will not allow a person to be who they uniquely and congruently and authentically are, then you're doing a disservice to that person, which brings us right back to the shadow self.
Yep.
Yep. Agreed.
Yep. There's another mask, so take that mask off.
We're talking a lot about masks, and it's a wonderful metaphor for the shadow self. So, tell me, and I'll address this question to both of you. What was the one mask you needed to take off to become your authentic self? And I'll direct this to Joanne first.
Oh, I have always been uniquely different. My mother said since age 4. I have always just seen things different, seen people different. Like if I look or see somebody, I don't see them for color, for face, for gender. I literally see through them, like see their heart, their soul. And I would see someone like that. And so I started hiding that. I started covering that up and would follow the masses, shall you say. Even in high school, people would say, you're not part of any clique. You like everybody. You're not a jock. You're not a druggie. You're not a cheerleader. You're not a this. You like everybody. And I got cornered in the bathroom and to get beat up. I like all this stupid stuff. I hate the word stupid, but that's what it was. Because I put a mask on to hide that I don't see people for race or color or male, female. I see their heart. I see their soul. When I look at somebody and meet somebody, that's what I see. I see like x-ray vision. And I really think that's what happened to me over this last year with my eyes, is that it's perfected my x-ray vision, that I authentically see who you are. I'm looking at you and I'm seeing you without your mask on. So I want you to take the mask off so that you can see yourself how I'm seeing you.
X-ray vision, folks. We could all be Superman.
Yes.
Okay? We can all look through the masks of ourselves and other people if we just get rid of the kryptonite that society keeps piling onto us. Now, Todd, I'm going to ask you the same question. What was your mask, the big one that you had to take off?
Well, I have to concur with Joanne. It's basically the same for me as well growing up. I was bullied, I was picked on, and, I saw people for their heart. I saw people for who they were, not, they're male or female or they're a jock or they're this or that or the other thing. And, I always thought, well, why can't I get that same respect? So I put that mask on to cover my voice, and that, I can't express, one way or the other. And I was never part of a clique. I did my thing, and pretty much a loner. And I guess it was that loner mask that I took off, and to expose my light and my authentic self, and to have a voice, to use that voice to show my true and unconditional love for myself and for everyone else.
Now, folks, you may be listening to this podcast right now, and we're talking in very esoteric terms. We're talking about X-ray vision, spiritual X-ray vision, and we're talking about looking through the person and beyond the person so we could see their heart. And it's all very warm and light and fluffy and goes back to that namaste metaphysical BS that we were talking about and referring to earlier. But masks are also very, very practical as well. The mask that you could be wearing is that you are a geek, that you love science fiction, that you love comic books. You're a 50-year-old man that loves comic books. Or maybe you are a woman who loves to play paintball, or something that would not be associated with women. And those masks are equally valid. We need to be able to take them off. because the masks that we wear are not just the spiritual, oh, well, I'm hippy dippy and I could see colors and I can see energy around. And yeah, that exists. I myself have been finding out on my journey that I really have a clairsentience and a clairaudience and clairvoyant here and there. And that sets me apart from other people. And yes, I did feel different as I was growing up. But the biggest mask that I had to take off was just accepting that I like things, comic books and Dungeons and Dragons and all that kind of stuff, that set me apart and made me different from everyone out there. Society wants us to be lemmings. They want us to fit in. They want us to fit into the box that they have defined for us. They frown on square pegs and round holes. But the truth is, we are all square pegs and round holes. But everything we are told by society, through the media, through television, through magazines, through movies, is we have to look a certain way. We have to act a certain way. We have to be successful in a certain way. And that is what really holds us back. For many, many years, I thought the definition of success was a corner office, a powerful job, a big car, a big house, the trophy wife on my arm. And I had all that, but I wasn't happy. Society was telling me I was successful, but inside myself, I wasn't being authentic and true to myself. I wasn't looking at my shadow self. I wasn't looking at my true self. So I will ask both of you the question I ask all my guests, and it's really my favorite part of the show. If there's anyone struggling with their shadow self, if there's anyone struggling with being authentic to who they are, what advice would you give them to be able to live authentically? And this time we'll start with Todd.
My advice would be, don't be afraid of the shadow. It's really just a constant reminder that there is light all around you. Just take those masks off and work your shadow self, and don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable working through that process, but that needs to happen. You need to cleanse and clear all of that junk that has been, that you have endured in your life. So,
okay, well, what happens if they're not even acknowledging the shadow self? What advice would you give them to actually be able to look at the shadow self? And in addition to the shadow self, to look at the authentic self, because a lot of the times the mask we wear have nothing to do with the darker part of our personalities, but they have to do with our authentic selves and who we truly are. And it could be anything from, my example of being a geek and a half, okay, which is now in de rigueur, with the Marvel Universe and the shows on DC and Star Wars coming back. It's great to be a geek. Everybody's a geek now. When I was growing up, being a geek meant you got your head stuck in a toilet bowl.
mm-hmm.
But it can also be someone who's struggling with their sexuality. It could be someone who is struggling with their family situation. So what advice would you give Todd, and we'll get to you in a second, Joanne, for someone who is struggling to even realize who their authentic self is before they could even get into the heavy lifting of dealing with the shadow self?
I think for me, it was learning about myself, and that it's okay to trust yourself to come forth with whatever you're hiding. Could be from coming out for sexuality. It could be being that geek. It could be because you like to have the company, be around women, not necessarily a girlfriend, but just hanging out around with women and having conversation. Versus going out with the guys. But you could do that as well. But I think it's just trust that people will understand and love you for who you are if you.
Okay, so let's get really down and granular. How can they develop that trust? What practical advice can you give to somebody who wants to do the heavy lifting or is in the middle of doing that heavy lifting?
Why don't you go ahead and ask Joanne that? I'm like tongue twisted right now.
Okay, well, Joanne, before we get into the same question of that advice, and of course it is still advice, what advice would you give to someone who is battling with the shadow self, who is struggling with the challenges of living authentically, whether that is acknowledging the dark parts of themselves or in a more practical sense of just accepting who they are, be it their beliefs, be it their sexuality, be it their likes and dislikes of a certain genre.
I always start first by letting them know that it's not complete darkness. Like they always, most of my clients or people that I've worked with, they think, well, they're going total to darkness or to the dark side. So I start by assuring them that it's not, that it's all part.
Hey, the dark side is cool. They have cookies.
Exactly. And their cookies are always better. They taste better. But I assure, I
Absolutely.
assure them that it's not. So I take baby steps. I assure them that it's fine, that we all have it. It's okay. So I assure them in baby steps. And then I let them know to own responsibility for it. Don't place blame that it was their mother, their father, their grandmother, their ancestors, their DNA. I assure them, A, not bad. B, own responsibility. It's you. It's your own physical self. You're a person that's here. So let's own responsibility.
And I want to thank you. Before, I'm sorry to interrupt you at the moment. I'll let you finish that thought. But I just wanted to thank you for saying that. That is so, so important. Take ownership of everything that goes on in your life. Take responsibility for it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're bad. It's just an acknowledgement that you are in control of your life, that you can steer it wherever you want to go. If you don't take responsibility for your life, you're always going to be playing the victim. You're always going to be at the whims of the winds of change and society, because as long as you play the victim, you're not living for yourself. You're living to the expectations and for the approval of other people.
Correct. And that's how I explain it. And then we'll start with a baby step, a tiny little thing that whatever it might be, like, well, they don't want to be addressed as the office bitch or something. So, and then so we want to take that mask off. So we address that. So those are how I address it, because then if they want to get down and dirty, nitty gritty, like you said, like the heavy stuff, then we'll dwell in further. What is the core issue? Where did it start? Most of the time it's childhood. Most of the time it's something that happened at age 5 or 7 that you're told, don't do this, don't do that. Or if it's traumatic, it can be something that was a traumatic issue or an abuse issue. Then you dwell further into that. But everybody's different. Every situation's different, but you're asking a general question, so I'm giving general specifics.
And that's fine, and it's a perfect answer. Now, let's flip that question, and I'm going to use something that's very prevalent in society today, and that's the issue of gender identity. Okay, now my own personal beliefs is that sex and gender are two different things. That sex is definitely binary, gender is a little bit more fluid. But there are people out there that say, well, it's very simple. You're either a man or you're a woman. There is no bisexuality. There is no gender fluidness. There is no, to bring in Jack Harkness, omnisexual behavior. Okay, Captain Jack, Doctor Who reference, got to be one in every show. So to those people who are closed-minded, and that shows to me that they have yet to do the work and look at their own shadow self. But what advice would you give to them so that they could be more accepting and opening and create that safe space for the other people to acknowledge and work on their shadow selves and become their authentic selves? What advice would you give to those people for helping get the acceptance or giving the acceptance?
So for the one who's looking for the acceptance because they are bisexual, I would have them look at, it's okay to be both, and why. What is their why?
And how do you get the other side? And I'll give an example. I'm just making this up, although I'm sure it is a true story for so many people, that they will come out to their family and they will say that they are gay, or they will say that they are bi, or that they are gender fluid. And the family is very, very rigid for whatever those reasons is. It could be societal, it could be religious, it could be generations of indoctrination that caused them this way. What advice would you give to the people who are in the situation where a friend or a family member just came out to them, or just became their authentic self, or just acknowledged their dark shadow side and just became an asshole? Maybe they acknowledge their shadow side, and they realize that part of their shadow side is to be selfish, because they have been indoctrinated, especially in the woo-woo world that we keep talking about, that rainbow bright world, that you have to give and you have to give and you have to give. And they do some exploration and they decide, something? I'm really selfish. I really want what I want. And there's nothing wrong with that. But once they start acting selfish, they get people that sit there and go, well, you have changed. You're no longer the person that I thought you were, and I'm never going to speak to you again. And how dare you do this to me? Those people, what?
I can answer that perfectly.
Go for it.
Because I've been one of those people for 51 years that have always given. So this last year, I have become selfish. I have taken that shadow self part and become selfish and told people, no, I can't do that for you. I'm taking care of me. I'm self-care, selfless, selfish, whatever, all the selves. It's all about me. Self. So
yes, this is a giving, loving podcast we're having today, folks.
It's honest. So people have said that to me in the last 6 to 9 months, that I've changed, I'm different, you're not the same, I don't like you anymore, cut me out of their lives, whatever. My answer to them is, I am now a mirror for you. So what is your shadow self that you no longer like about yourself?
Ooh, I love that. Oh my Lord, I love that.
What are you now seeing in me that you don't like in yourself? And I really actually had somebody say to me, oh my God, I am a selfish person. And I'm like, yes, you are, and have been for many years.
Wow. Okay, I was going to ask a general question, but now I want to know how that person reacted when you said that.
They didn't like it. We didn't talk for a while, but we talk now. But I'm very blunt when I get going with my clients, and they know that I tell them, if we want to do this work and we're going to get to the heavy stuff, I'm really blunt, because I've had the honor and privilege to have mentors that worked with me that were very blunt.
When you had those conversations with those other people, and they would say, I'm not going to accept you now because you're changing, okay? And really the only constant in life is change. We all change. But when they said that, how did that make you feel? What impact did that have in your life at that moment?
In the beginning, it was very hard, very, very hard, because I've always been, as Todd stated, we've been the givers, the healers, the fixers. But I knew it was one of my, as you also said earlier, we always evolve, we're always changing. So I knew it was one of the pieces that I needed to get rid of. I needed to work on. I needed to be my authentic self, to broaden myself, to come onto this, to get my voice out there. I needed to change that. So it was very hard. And I had a couple, pity parties for myself, like, oh my God, I can't believe I said no to that person. Oh my gosh, why am I doing this? But now, 10 months later, it's what needed to be done, because here I am talking about it, and it will help somebody else. It's okay to say no. It's a powerful world. It's okay to say, it's time for me. I need to be authentic. I need to advance.
It's okay to say no. And that is a lesson that I think everyone can learn. It was one that I had to learn myself, because I was always not quite enabler, but if someone came to me for anything, I would always say yes. Even if it was to sacrifice myself, I would always say yes. And that was something that I had to learn how to do, which was to set the boundaries. And folks, there's nothing wrong with setting boundaries. It's also very, very important, as you said, that it was difficult for you at the beginning. And as you did it, and as you grew into your power and you started living more authentically, Joanne, that it became easier. And folks, I'm going to tell you, when you're going down this path of authenticity and living congruently and discovering and honoring and acknowledging your shadow self, it's not easy. Okay. And this goes back to the namaste rainbow bright world of sunshine and lollipops. We all want that, but the truth is, occasionally you're going to get a gumdrop. Okay. You're going to get some candy corn in with the sunshine and lollipops. Not everything could be a Reese's peanut butter cup. And that's okay. You do the work. It'll be uncomfortable for you at the beginning because you're stretching yourself. You're stretching yourself beyond your comfort zone. But living outside your comfort zone is where the magic happens. So just stick to it. Continue to do the work. Continue to honor yourself. And build yourself a good support system. Todd and Joanne found each other. They are a support system unto themselves, and then through their podcast, they are going to be supporting other people that are on this journey. So you have resources such as their upcoming podcast. Look around you to your friends and build that support system that could help you while you do this. Because I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. It is a challenging journey that will hurt. But at the end of the day, you will become a better person because you will be the person you're choosing to be. Right now, Todd, Joanna, I keep saying Joanna when it's Joanne. I think I've done this entire interview.
No, Joanne is my name, but Joanna is my
okay, so
shadow
I was
person,
wrong, but I'm right. Cool. Okay, well, in any case, I'd like to thank Todd and Joanna, Joanne, Jessica, and maybe Shirley if she's sitting in there somewhere. Because this has been a really great conversation. And I know that the truth nuggets that you have dropped throughout this whole thing and the sharings of your stories is going to help a lot of people. But right now, I want to give you guys the opportunity to promote your individual projects, your individual services, and also wrap it up by talking about the podcast and how people can get in touch with you. So I know this may sound chauvinistic, but ladies first. Joanne, Joanna, Shirley, Jennifer, whoever I'm speaking with. Can you tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you do as far as your work with the shadow self and your coaching? How could they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me through my website. Actually, I'm going to have Todd go first because he knows more about our technical stuff. So, Todd.
Okay. People can reach me personally through my website, which is www.mbsr61, and that is basically the short version of my the business name, which is Mind Body Spirit Reiki, in the digit 61. So that's mbsr61.com. They can also email me at todd@mbsr61.com. If once we get our podcast launched, the website for the podcast is going to be www.theshadowselfajourneywithin.com. That's theshadowselfajourneywithin.com.
Okay, I do want to thank you. And Joanna, I know all this technical stuff is challenging, but can you let people know the website, just the website they can go to get in touch with you?
Oh, yes, I can now. My website is www.thehealingpalace.com, and my email is joanne@thehealingpalace.com. So again, the website is www.thehealingpalace.com, and my email is joanne@thehealingpalace.com.
And folks, if you want to get in touch with Todd, you want to get in touch with Joanne and learn more about their businesses, maybe get a Reiki session, maybe get a shadow self session from Joanna. You don't have any place to write down that information. It will be on the show page, along with some of the best notes in podcasting, if I do say so myself, and I do. There are links to all the information there. There are links to the references we made. You can get time-stamped transcription of the conversation with the main notes. So while you're listening to it. If you want to go back, you can know exactly where to go to get the information you want. And you can find all that by visiting the website at passionatetalk.com. That's www.passionatetalk.com. And if you would do me a big solid favor, if you enjoy the conversation I'm having with Todd and Joanne and any of the other conversations I've had on this podcast, please do me a favor and head on over to iTunes and leave me a 5-star rating and a few great sentences as a review. It'll help other people find this podcast so I can work to empower and inspire other people to acknowledge their shadow selves and live authentically and really live the life that they deserve. So guys, I do want to thank you very much for taking the time today. I had a blast with this conversation. And if you want to come on back once the podcast is going and you want to talk about some stories of how that's going, I'll be more than happy to have you on. And right now, I just want to say thank you, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
This sounds like it's going to be a great podcast. The Shadow Self, A Journey Within, the podcast that Todd and Joanne has put together, is going to be really great. It sounds very intense, very deep, a lot of heavy lifting going on, a lot of important work that they have put into this so we all could live authentically and be comfortable in our own skin and in our own shoes. And really, at the end of the day, folks, isn't that what it's all about? Learning how to be happy with yourself, all aspects of yourself, and just giving the big old finger to society when they say you're not good enough or you should be a certain way and force you to wear those masks that Todd and Joanne talked about all throughout this conversation. Today is actually the launch of A Shadow Self, The Journey Within. So why don't you head on over to iTunes and do a search for Shadow Self, or just head on over to www.theshadowself.ajourneywithin.com, and you'll be able to listen to the debut episodes from Todd and Joanne. This is going to be great. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. And right now, that's all the time we have for today. So until next time, follow your dreams and passions and manifest the life that you choose.